Late at night, in a silent Japanese school, the echo of dripping water filled the empty hallway. A student, anxious yet curious, pushed open the creaking door of the girls' restroom. Inside, the air felt heavier, as though unseen eyes lingered. Suddenly, from the last stall, a voice whispered, deep, melodic, almost inviting. "Do you want red paper or blue?" The girl froze. The choice was not innocent. Behind the curtain of myth stood a figure, cloaked in crimson, faceless yet strangely alluring. This was not merely a ghost. This was Aka Manto, a being who blurred the line between terror and temptation. Aka Manto, whose name translates as Red Cloak, is one of the most infamous spirits in Japanese urban folklore. While often told as a schoolyard horror tale meant to frighten children, the deeper roots of the legend reveal something more disturbing. This spirit does not only haunt the hidden corners of public restrooms, it thrives on intimacy, secrecy, and the vulnerability of those who encounter it. Through the decades, this urban legend evolved into more than a bathroom ghost story. In hushed whispers, students and storytellers began to describe Aka Manto as a spirit who could sense unspoken yearnings, who appeared not only to frighten, but to tempt. His legend became a mirror of the human psyche, reflecting both our fear of death and the allure of forbidden intimacy.
The story of Aka Manto may sound like a modern ghost tale told to frighten children, but its origins trace back further into the shifting cultural landscape of post-war Japan. In the mid-20th century, as cities rapidly rebuilt after devastation, schools became places of both order and hidden anxiety. Behind clean classrooms and strict discipline lingered shadows, fears of growing up, of facing authority, of discovering desires that could not be spoken aloud. Public restrooms, particularly school toilets, carried an unusual cultural weight. In Japan, these spaces were both necessary and feared. Unlike the brightly lit classrooms, toilets were often isolated, tucked at the end of dark corridors or on unused floors. They were places where students found themselves alone, where whispers could echo, where the imagination could take hold. For generations, children believed that ghosts, monsters, and other beings lingered there, waiting in the silence. It was in this atmosphere that Aka Manto's legend flourished. First appearing in oral tales during the early Showa era, he was described not only as a faceless man in a crimson cloak, but as a figure who appeared specifically to those caught in private, vulnerable moments. While other school ghosts were content to startle or frighten, Aka Manto went further. He asked a question. His demand for an answer transformed the encounter from a passive haunting into an intimate exchange. Some folklorists suggest that the story of Aka Manto reflects hidden cultural anxieties about adolescence. To enter a restroom alone meant to confront not only physical needs, but also one's own secrecy, shame, and the unspoken process of maturity. For young women in particular, the legend carried deeper resonance. The idea of a male figure intruding into private space, not with violence at first, but with temptation disguised as choice. The power of Aka Manto's myth lies in this symbolic tension. His question, red paper or blue paper, was never just about color. In post-war Japan, red and blue carried heavy associations. Red was the color of blood, of passion, of danger. Blue was the color of coldness, suffocation, the lifeless body drained of warmth. To be asked to choose was to be confronted with mortality on one side and forbidden desire on the other. Over time,
Children, to understand why Aka Manto unsettles listeners even today, we must look not only at the surface of his legend, but at the deeper symbolism that surrounds his appearance. Unlike other yokai or urban spirits, he is not grotesque. He does not appear as a rotting corpse, nor as a shrieking phantom with bloodied features. Instead, he cloaks himself in elegance. His crimson mantle is long, flowing, and strangely regal. His face is always hidden by a mask, sometimes described as porcelain white, other times as golden, in rare tales even as blank and featureless. This concealment is crucial. A hidden face is both terrifying and alluring. Without features, the imagination takes over and the mind fills in what the eyes cannot see. Some claim that the mask makes him faceless, a being who could be anyone or no one at all. Others whisper that behind the mask lies a beauty so overwhelming that to gaze upon it would drive one to obsession. In both interpretations, the mask becomes not just a covering, but a weapon of desire. The crimson cloak carries equal weight. In traditional Japanese symbolism, red is the color of vitality, blood, and sensuality. It is also the color most often associated with female beauty: red lips, red kimonos, red thread of fate. By wrapping himself in this hue, Aka Manto is draped in the language of attraction, while at the same time signaling danger. His presence becomes an invitation and a warning intertwined. But what truly defines Aka Manto is not his appearance, it is the way he engages his chosen victims. He does not leap out with violence. Instead, he poses a question, spoken in a voice that survivors describe as strangely smooth, low, and almost tender. Do you want red paper or blue paper? The phrasing is deceptively simple, but folklorists argue that it carries the weight of ritual. It is not simply a test of courage, it is a symbolic transaction, a moment where the victim must answer, and in doing so, they are drawn into his snare. Like a lover who offers two impossible choices, Aka Manto ensnares the mind with suggestion. Whichever option one chooses, the result is doom, yet the very act of choosing gives the encounter its intimate charge. This is what sets Aka Manto apart from other school ghosts. He does not only frighten, he seduces through uncertainty. His power lies in the unspoken. When the voice asks its question, the victim feels exposed, as if their private fears and secret desires have been laid bare. Choosing red may symbolize a subconscious pull towards passion, violence, or forbidden intimacy. Choosing blue may represent surrender, denial, or escape into numbness. In either case, the victim is not merely punished, they are judged by their own hidden desires. It is said that Aka Manto selects his targets carefully. He does not appear to Not everyone hears Aka Manto's voice. His presence is not random, nor is it a universal curse upon any student who dares to enter a restroom alone. Instead, the legend insists that he seeks out certain people, those whose inner lives draw him closer, like a flame attracting moths. To understand who he favors, we must examine the psychological texture of his appearances. The lonely ones. First are the lonely ones. School corridors are filled with chatter and laughter, yet within every crowd there are those who walk alone. Folklore describes Aka Manto as the hunter of solitude. Students who linger after class, who slip into the restroom when no one is watching, are said to be most vulnerable. Their loneliness, whether chosen or imposed, becomes a signal that he cannot ignore. To these individuals, the whisper of, "Do you want red paper or blue?" does not feel like a threat, it feels like recognition. For a moment, someone has noticed them, and that, perhaps, is the cruelest temptation of all. The secret bearers. Another group often associated with his legend are those burdened with secrets. In adolescence, secrets are heavy, hidden crushes, forbidden desires, shame about the body, guilt over small betrayals. The restroom, a place of privacy, becomes the physical counterpart to these inner walls. Folklorists note that Aka Manto's voice emerges precisely in moments when a person feels most concealed. Yet the spirit shatters that concealment instantly. His question is not only about red or blue paper, it is about forcing the secret bearer to acknowledge their hidden truth, and in that forced acknowledgement, he takes his hold. The curious and the bold. There are also those who go looking for him. Schoolyards across Japan have long echoed with dares. Stay in the bathroom after sunset. Call his name 3 times. See if he answers. Some students, half mocking, half daring, intentionally seek out the encounter. They're often the brave ones, or those who wish to prove themselves to peers. Ironically, these are exactly the types Aka Manto delights in, for courage and arrogance make for easy downfall. When his whisper finally reaches them, the bravado cracks, and in that sudden moment of vulnerability, he strikes, not with claws, but with choice. The yearning. Perhaps the most unsettling stories are those that describe victims not as terrified, but as drawn in. In hushed tones, students have admitted feeling a strange pull toward the faceless figure. They speak of his voice as smooth, almost hypnotic. For some, the encounter was not pure horror, but a moment of dangerous intimacy. In these accounts, Aka Manto appears less as a monster and more as a forbidden companion, offering a brush with the unknown that felt disturbingly close to desire. These are the ones who linger a moment too long before. Every telling of Aka Manto's legend centers on the encounter. It is not a violent ambush, nor a sudden attack from the shadows. Instead, it unfolds like a ritual, slow and deliberate, charged with tension. Survivors, or those who claim to be survivors, describe it as an experience both terrifying and strangely intimate, as though they were no longer in a school restroom, but in a space suspended between reality and dream. The atmosphere. The scene begins with silence. The hum of fluorescent lights, the faint dripping of a leaky faucet, the echo of footsteps in an empty corridor. These sounds sharpen until they feel deafening. The victim steps inside, perhaps late at night, perhaps during an ordinary afternoon, and notices how still the air has become. The stalls are closed, shadows stretch unnaturally long, and yet something feels present, watching. A sudden chill creeps across the skin. Some report the scent of iron, others the faint sweetness of incense. The atmosphere shifts until the ordinary restroom feels transformed, no longer a place of necessity, but a stage for an unearthly performance. The voice. And then the voice comes. Deep, resonant, never rushed. It emerges from the last stall, or from behind the door, or sometimes directly from nowhere at all. Do you want red paper or blue? The words are soft, yet they pierce the heart. Witnesses describe the voice as smooth, even beautiful, with a timbre that suggests calm authority. There was no anger in it, no threat. The horror comes from its composure. The question is posed not as a demand, but as an invitation. Some recount that the voice seems tailored to the listener, gentle for the timid, commanding for the bold, playful for the curious. This adaptability, folklorists argue, is part of his seduction. Aka Manto does not simply appear, he engages, as though he knows exactly what tone will disarm his target. The presence. The moment after the question is the most dangerous. Victims often describe feeling frozen, their breath shallow, their bodies trembling, yet unable to move. Some say they glimpse the edge of the crimson cloak beneath the stall door. Others swear they saw the faint shimmer of a porcelain mask. Rare accounts claim he appears fully, tall, draped in red, faceless yet strangely magnetic. To gaze upon him directly, they say, is like staring into a void that gazes back with unsettling intimacy. What makes the encounter haunting is not just fear, it is the peculiar sense of closeness. The victim feels singled out, chosen, as though the figure has crossed the veil of reality specifically to ask them this question. In that moment, the isolation of the restroom becomes a private chamber, where the victim and the spirit are bound together in silence, waiting for the answer. The illusion of choice. The choice itself is the heart of the encounter, red or blue. Two simple options, yet each carries heavy weight. Victims rarely consider refusing. Something about the voice compels them to respond, as though not answering would be a betrayal of an unspoken pact. The moment stretches unbearably long, the whisper echoing in their minds. Some survivors say they tried to stall, to say nothing only for the voice to go closer, softer, urging them. Others claim they blurted out an answer without thinking, their choice instinctive, driven by subconscious desire. Whether they chose red or blue, the outcome was always grim, though the details of what followed varied with each telling. The seduction of the encounter. What fascinates folklorists is the nature of the exchange. Unlike most ghostly encounters, which rely on shock or terror, Aka Manto's power lies in conversation. He does not force himself upon the victim. Instead, he asks. And the power of Aka Manto's legend does not rest solely in his appearance or his chilling voice. It lives in the question itself, the offer of two colors, two paths, two fates. Red paper or blue paper. At first glance, the choice seems absurd, meaningless even. Yet in every retelling, this detail is central, and its deeper resonance reveals why the spirit's myth endures across generations. Red, the color of desire and death. Red, in Japanese tradition, is a color heavy with meaning. It is the color of celebration, of brides' kimonos, of the rising sun itself, but it is also the color of spilled blood, of fire, of feverish passion. In Aka Manto's legend, choosing red paper is said to result in a brutal fate. The victim is slashed, their body painted crimson, their final moments soaked in the hue they selected. Yet the deeper reading goes beyond violence. Red is also symbolic of desire, the longing that burns within the human heart, especially in adolescence. Some folklorists interpret the red paper as a metaphor for choosing passion, temptation, even intimacy in its most dangerous form. The victim who chooses red is not simply choosing death. They are, in a sense, admitting to a yearning they cannot control. And Aka Manto, the masked tempter, punishes that admission with fatal intensity. Thus, red becomes a mirror for society's unease with unspoken desires. In conservative times, particularly in post-war Japan, the discussion of sexuality was often silenced, wrapped in shame. The story of Aka Manto gave shape to those fears, presenting passion as a choice that leads inevitably to ruin. Blue, the color of coldness and denial. Blue, by contrast, carries a colder weight. In many versions of the story, those who choose blue paper are strangled, their faces turning the same lifeless hue as oxygen drains away. Where red is passion and exposure, blue is suffocation and silence. On a symbolic level, blue represents denial, the attempt to suppress one's desires, to smother emotions until only numbness remains. Victims who choose blue may be expressing fear of passion, fear of exposure, or a yearning to escape altogether. But in Aka Manto's grasp, denial offers no safety. To reject desire is not to escape, but to surrender. The legend of Aka Manto is more than a ghost story repeated in classrooms. Across decades, countless students have claimed, sometimes in hushed tones, sometimes with nervous laughter, that they or someone they knew had encountered the red-cloaked spirit. Of course, such testimonies are impossible to verify. Yet their persistence reveals how deeply the myth has embedded itself into the collective imagination. What makes these stories especially unsettling is how often they are told not as accounts of sheer terror, but as confessions of something far more complicated: fear mixed with fascination. Testimony 1. The Girl Who Stayed Behind. In the late 1950s, a high school student from Kyoto, remembered only by the pseudonym Keiko, reported a chilling experience to her friends. One evening, after staying late to practice calligraphy, she went to the restroom before leaving the building. The corridors were empty, the windows rattling with autumn wind. "I thought I was alone," her statement began, "but I felt the air grow heavy, as if someone else had entered without footsteps." She described hearing the whisper behind her stall door, "Do you want red paper or blue?" Keiko admitted that for one terrifying moment, she did not feel like running. She felt like answering. The voice was not frightening, she confessed. It was beautiful, like someone asking me a secret I had always wanted to share. Though she never revealed which answer she chose, her friends swore she avoided that restroom for the rest of her school years. Testimony 2. The Boy Who Laughed. From Tokyo in the 1970s comes the tale of Takeshi, a mischievous boy who enjoyed mocking ghost stories. According to classmates, he once boasted, "If Aka Manto appears, I'll just ask for green paper instead." One evening, after sports practice, he was dared to enter the restroom alone and call the spirit's name 3 times. Minutes passed. When he emerged, his face was pale, his lips trembling. Though he insisted nothing had happened, one of his friends later claimed Takeshi confessed privately, "I heard him. He laughed when I asked for green paper. It was not the laugh of a man. It was soft, like a woman's laugh, but filled with mockery. I never went back there at night." Takeshi left school soon after, though whether the encounter had anything to do with it, no one could say. Testimony 3. The Lonely Student. In the 1980s, during Japan's economic boom, a quiet junior high school girl, her name lost to time, was said to have encountered Aka Manto repeatedly. Friends noticed she often stayed behind after classes, wandering the hallways alone. One day she confided to a teacher that she felt someone was following her. In her final diary entry, later discovered by her family, she wrote, "The voice comes when I..." Why does the story of Aka Manto endure when so many other schoolyard ghost tales fade with time? Why does this faceless spirit, cloaked in crimson, still haunt the imagination of students, artists, and folklorists alike? The answer lies not in his violence, but in the deeper psychological dimensions of his myth. Unlike other spirits of Japanese urban folklore, Aka Manto embodies more than fear. He embodies temptation. The shadow of adolescence. Adolescence is a time of contradictions, innocence and curiosity, fear and desire. For many young people, the school restroom is not merely a place of necessity, but a private refuge from the watchful eyes of teachers and classmates. Within those walls, students confront both physical changes and emotional solitude. It is here, in this liminal space, that Aka Manto emerges. The spirit appears precisely when the victim is most alone, when there are no witnesses, when the silence forces one inward. His question, red or blue, resonates like a challenge, but also like an invitation. It is no coincidence that the legends spread most vividly among adolescents, those who are beginning to navigate questions of identity, secrecy, and desire. Aka Manto is less a ghost of the restroom, more a ghost of adolescence itself. The fear and desire intertwined. At the heart of Aka Manto's myth is a psychological paradox. He terrifies, yet he attracts. The faceless mask not only hides, it invites projection. Those who encounter him imagine what they most fear or most desire behind that porcelain veil. The crimson cloak signals both danger and allure, reminding victims of both bloodshed and passion. In this sense, Aka Manto functions as what psychologists call a liminal figure, a being who exists at the threshold between two states. He is both monster and seducer, executioner and companion. This duality is precisely why people remember him not just with fear, but with an almost guilty fascination. A mirror of secret desires. Many testimonies suggest that Aka Manto appears not to everyone, but to those carrying secrets, loneliness, shame, or yearning. Folklorists argue that the legend is a metaphor for what individuals dare not admit to themselves. To choose red is to surrender to passion, to risk exposure. To choose blue is to bury one's desires in silence, to suffocate the self. Both choices reflect inner conflict, not just external danger. Here lies the genius of the story. Aka Manto does not create desire or fear. He reveals what is already. The legend of Aka Manto did not remain confined to whispered tales in school hallways. Over decades, his image transformed, adapting to new media and shifting cultural contexts. What began as a localized urban myth of a faceless figure lurking in school restrooms evolved into a broader archetype of temptation, mystery, and the uncanny in Japanese popular culture. From oral tradition to printed folklore. In the post-war era, the story spread through word of mouth, passed among students, and occasionally chronicled in magazines dedicated to ghost stories, kaidan. Early depictions emphasized horror and moral caution. The figure appeared in restrooms as a warning against curiosity, disobedience, or lingering too long in forbidden spaces. Illustrations from the 1960s often showed a tall figure shrouded in a flowing crimson cloak, faceless, emerging from a stall. These images highlighted fear and anonymity, reinforcing the legend as a classic cautionary tale. Incorporation into manga and literature. By the 1970s and 1980s, Aka Manto began appearing in manga and literature aimed at teenagers and young adults. Artists and writers expanded his persona, exploring psychological and emotional dimensions beyond mere fright. In these stories, he was no longer only a harbinger of death, but a symbolic figure of desire, secrecy, and the inner conflicts of adolescence. The mask became more stylized, the cloak more flowing, and the question, red or blue, was often depicted with ambiguity, leaving the reader to contemplate the consequences rather than showing them graphically. Some manga authors depicted him as almost tragic, a figure caught between the mortal world and the supernatural, bound by rules of folklore, yet aware of human emotions. This representation introduced the idea of Aka Manto as a subtle seducer. He did not need to strike, he enticed, tested, and reflected the inner fears and longings of those who encountered him. Horror films and visual media. In the late 20th and early 21st centuries, Japanese horror film began to incorporate urban legends as primary motifs. Aka Manto, appeared in films as a ghostly antagonist in school settings, often contrasted with more overtly grotesque spirits like Onryo. Directors highlighted his elegance and mystery, showing the crimson cloak moving silently in dimly lit hallways, the masked face barely visible in the shadows. Film adaptations leaned into his duality, terrifying yet magnetic, violent yet emotionally compelling. He became a visual metaphor for the intersection of fear and attraction, a concept central to Japanese horror, where beauty and horror often coexist. Cinematographers used lighting and framing to create tension, emphasizing isolation and psychological unease rather than relying on blood or shock. Internet culture and modern storytelling. With the rise of the internet, Aka Manto found a new audience. Blogs, forums, and social media amplified his myth, turning him into a global urban legend. Online stories often explored his role as a digital tempter, appearing in images, short films, or illustrated threads. Many modern retellings play with ambiguity. Some portray him as male. After decades of whispered tales, manga adaptations, films, and online legends, Aka Manto remains one of Japan's most enigmatic and haunting figures. He is more than a ghost, more than a schoolyard fright. He is a symbol, an archetype, a reflection of the human psyche. To understand why his legend endures, one must look at the combination of fear, desire, and the universal experience of choice that defines him. The archetype of temptation. Aka Manto embodies the archetype of the tempter, a presence that does not strike, chase, or demand compliance, but instead offers a choice. The question, red or blue, is deceptively simple, yet it represents a confrontation with oneself. Every encounter with him forces the listener to confront their hidden fears and desires, to face the tension between passion and denial, exposure and concealment. This archetype resonates across cultures, but Aka Manto's uniqueness lies in his subtlety. He does not compel action through force. He seduces through suggestion, through psychological intimacy, through the magnetic pull of the unknown. In a single whispered question, he encapsulates the duality of human experience, the desire to confront one's longings and the fear of the consequences of doing so. The reflection of society. His legend also mirrors societal anxieties. Post-war Japan, with its strict social hierarchies and expectations, cultivated environments where secrecy, shame, and repression were common. Aka Manto's private encounters with lonely, secretive, or curious adolescents are not random. They are symbolic. They expose what society often tries to hide: private fears, secret yearnings, and the tension between conformity and individual desire. By embodying these anxieties, Aka Manto becomes more than a ghost. He becomes a cultural mirror, reflecting both the terror of the forbidden and the fascination with it. His crimson cloak and faceless mask are not just tools of horror, they are symbols of the unknown, the alluring, and the unspoken. The horror of intimacy. What makes Aka Manto truly haunting is the intimacy of his terror. Unlike spirits who attack, scream, or haunt in obvious ways, he approaches quietly, personally, and psychologically. His presence is tailored to the victim, his voice crafted to seduce and unsettle. The encounter is not merely a fright, it is an intimate confrontation with one's own vulnerabilities. The horror lies in being understood, in having a secret revealed by a faceless stranger, in being chosen. This intimacy explains why the legend resonates across generations. It is a personal horror, one that each listener or reader experiences differently. The faceless figure waits in empty restrooms,